Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. Stephanie Stanke, business owner of Wooster's Garage, is joining us today to talk about opportunities available to women and men in the automotive industry, advice on how to work with schools, and how she works with their competitors in order to better the industry. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. We had such a fun intro call to this podcast that I was very, very excited when I got off of the podcast intro. So how are you doing today, and how are things up in, I guess, north of us in Wisconsin?
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, that intro call was absolutely great. I loved it. I think we have so much we can talk about. Things are going really well here, and I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk about a lot of those topics up here. Things are going great. We're just working every day.
In that intro call, there's a lot of people we have on the podcast that I feel like have very similar perspectives to me, very similar viewpoints. But when I got off of that call with you, I was like, it almost was like I was looking in a mirror, right? Like it was, there was so much that we agreed on and really had the same viewpoints on that. It was kind of eerie, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of thought the same thing. I love talking to so many people in this industry. There's so many opinions, so many ideas that go around. But yeah, I love your vision as well with this industry. I'm so excited to see your podcast. I was kind of looking at some of the other ones you've done, and I relate to so much of it. And I think they're great topics to get discussed. So I'm really excited to dive into it with you.
Well, let's learn about you first, then we'll learn about the shop, and then we'll talk about solving everything in the industry over the course of an hour. But how did you get into the automotive industry? I feel like you've got a really unique story there.
Yeah, so I started, I watched actually, my family was in the automotive industry. I grew up just kind of watching it, and I wasn't really part of it, but I thought it was really interesting. And so then when I got into high school, I started driving. I took auto shop classes, and the more I started driving, the more I wanted to race cars. The more I raced cars, the more I would break cars. And, I had to learn how to fix those. And so, it just really got me intrigued. But then, I was seeing all these little things that I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if the industry really focused on this or that. Or, I started seeing setbacks too, doors that would close where they're like, oh, this really isn't for girls. I was the only girl in my auto shop class, and so it was kind of interesting, and I love challenges. That's, I think, my biggest thing is I love challenges. So the more people are like, this really isn't a good fit, that I was like, well, now it's going to be. So, I started in high school, and, I just saw so many opportunities that I just kept going with it.
Where do you think you got kind of that chip on your shoulder to, I love how you phrased that if they say it's not an opportunity, you said, well, now it's going to be. How did that come about?
I think I was just born like this, to be honest. I'm sure my mom would tell you that I probably was a handful. I've always been very, I work really hard. she'll tell you that much. I've always worked very hard, but I've also been, I always look for opportunities to do better, see better. That's kind of how our family was and how they raised me. And I watched my grandpa in this industry. He's just an automotive legend, genius. He's done so much with this industry. So, I was always seeing that he was getting called out in the middle of the night, and, somebody's car broke down. Somebody had this question. He was a teacher. So his students, were always reaching out to him, and that was amazing. And I still now, with the shop being open, have people that email or call here because they recognize his name. And, so that's kind of cool to see. And so I saw how much work he was doing, and, kind of the way I was raised in that regard. You work really hard, you keep making progress. And so I kind of combine that with my really stubborn personality, and I see just kind of all these opportunities to just really grow and do better. And, so I kind of live by this motto that you try to do 1% better every day. It adds up to big results. And so, just kind of combining all of those things, I keep seeing doors that were closed or different opportunities. And I'm like, nope, we're going to change that. So
Let's talk about your grandpa for a second, because I think that's really kind of what set the foundation. At the top of the intro, I mentioned how much I enjoyed our conversation. And that was one of the things that I think we had a lot of similarities with, was trying to pay homage to all of the people that came before us. And your grandpa is one of those people.
absolutely. As there's so many people that have really evolved this industry. I mean, from beginning to now, and, it keeps going, but like my grandpa, Dan Wooster, he's amazing. He's done so much work for this industry, and a lot of things I think probably even I don't know that he's done for this industry. And it's been amazing. So, I mean, he has worked all over the world when it comes to the automotive industry. He's just trained. He's done programming. He's done, you name it, anything in this industry that he could get his hands on. And so it was really amazing to watch the history with him, his family, their business, but not just them. The coworkers and the people that he's worked with over the years, who now I have the pleasure of working with, a lot of his colleagues too. And so that's amazing to see how many people are heavily involved in creating what we have now, who's gotten us to where we are, all of these inventions and all of this moving forward. And so, I mean, the history of the automotive industry is just so extensive and is so amazing and impressive in reality. But that was a big thing. So that's where the name came from for my shop, was actually a surprise to him, because just the what he's done alone for this industry, plus everyone else. I think the history of the industry is extremely important to know where we came from and where we're going.
Talk me through the story of how you surprised your grandpa with the name, because I thought that was great.
So when I decided to open my own shop, that was kind of a rocky road, and you're trying to figure out what's the best name and what's this. That's a big piece of it. And so for me, the history was extremely important. And so my grandpa was under the impression it was going to be a different business name. And so I was working really hard on two different names. One everybody thought was going to be the business name, and then behind the scenes, my mom and I were kind of working extensively on that. And so when we opened it, we actually named it Wooster's Garage to name it after him and his family's business. So he was surprised. He was actually expecting it to be a completely different direction. And so we kind of it was a lot of work with trying to put together two businesses, one fake one and one real one. So we could, make it seem like we weren't naming it after him. But so when we opened, we named it after him. And yeah, I guess that's a big highlight, is just being able to bring that back and make sure people know his name for everything that he's done. So
The sentimental piece is so
yes.
cool, and I think it's so nice when you have a name like that really pays
Yeah.
tribute to your family, that those days that you're working your tail off and you're really trying to, I think anybody in any aspect of their life battles days where maybe it's not so glorious, but when you look back and you see, you're doing this, and the purpose for doing it kind of maybe helps bring that purpose full circle.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really does help a lot. And then I do a lot, like, to try to make sure I'm paying tribute to their name and to his name and everything that his family for generations had done. And they weren't in Wisconsin. They were back in Michigan, at first, and none of them live up here. So, I always try to keep that in mind, that whether I'm doing good or doing bad that day or whatever, the case is, I have to work through that. But it still is their name and it's their name on it. So, there's a lot of pressure there too, to make sure that we're paying tribute in the correct respect, and to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to make it a good legacy for him. So
I do have to ask about the racing part. The racing and
yeah,
car nerd in me in general it is always curious what people do for
yeah.
their hobby. So tell me a little bit about what you're racing.
So currently, I am getting into drifting more and more. We've been kind of throughout the years trying different things. I grew up more with drag racing, and so I did that a lot, especially when I was younger. I got into rally cross, any of that kind of racing as well. So I did that for almost 12 years. And then now my focus has heavily been on drifting. So a lot of my friends, a lot of my family have been kind of getting into that a little bit more. So right now, I'm in the progress of building my 240. That's my drift car right now. And yeah, just having a blast when we go out there. So that is my free time, is still cars.
I love that. It's I had mentioned that I am not that familiar with drifting yet. I know it's a very up and coming sport, and
Yeah.
at like a different sector, I guess, of racing. But boy, is it bringing a lot of young people into interest in their interest in cars.
It is. It's a lot of fun. And I mean, you should definitely come check it out sometime. You'd have a great time. It is a lot of fun, and there's so many people getting into it. And it's good. It's a good hobby to get into. We're not out getting in trouble or anything like that. And, it's a great way for even kids, like you said, to kind of just start getting into different pieces of the field that aren't maybe just working on the cars, or, just aren't being a service writer or something like that. So I mean, it's super cool. It's a really good experience, and you meet so many amazing people out there.
Yeah, I love that part about the car community as a whole. So many people that'll help each other out. So many people that will, have the same interests that you do, and makes conversation a lot easier. Really cool. I will definitely take you up on that at some point to come check out a drift race. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important, I think it's a really good segue into our topic of conversation today, was that shop class had a pretty big impact on you, right? And maybe put you down this path in the first place. Can you talk to me about the importance of that shop class, and how it relates to how your career's progressed?
I think it's extremely important that, yeah, we have these shop classes. So for myself, it was a really good way to kind of just try it and see if it was even something that I'd be interested in. Plus, it was a great opportunity to just learn some of the basics. High school, that's when you're learning to drive, and there's so many things that go into that alone. So, I mean, I think my shop class taught me a lot about just the importance of how much at that age you really don't know about cars. You're in control of one because you're driving one, so you're supposed to know how to take care of it, and you're supposed to know when to take it in, and all of these things. So, I mean, the shop class was extremely important from just that perspective of it's such a basic time when you really, unless you grew up doing it, you really didn't have a lot of experience with this. And it shows just the need for it. And then it was a good segue to start getting into this industry because, that's where you can find out if this is something that even interests you or not. And then you start learning a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes. And anyone that's even remotely interested, they kind of keep going with it from there. And I'm not going to say how long it's been since I've been in high school, but from then to now, it's improved a lot. It's improved drastically what they do and don't have in these shop classes. Our shop class was very small. I mean, we had, we had like lawnmowers, things like that. We started
Yep.
with small engines. I think we had one lift. Now, some of these, at least where I'm at right now, I work with a lot of the schools here. They have these massive shops. Some of them are bigger than mine. And it is great because they get to work with all these industry leaders. So, I mean, it's definitely progressed a lot as to what they can learn in these shop classes, and I think it's going to keep evolving. But I think, yeah, overall, the high school classes are so impactful. They were for me. It was a great eye opener into everything about that, but just the basics that kids should know anyways when they're
Right.
driving. So I think it's twofold. I think they're extremely important on so many levels.
So as you've transitioned into owning a shop, you've got a good amount of experience now. You're still involved with the schools, right?
Yes, I am still heavily involved with the local schools, not just high schools with the local colleges, but also the middle schools. And junior high, they do it kind of different here. So depending where you live. So I'm involved in a lot of those different levels, trying to get kids at all different ages to understand that this is a potential career path for them if they're interested. And if not, the importance of still understanding the basics with vehicles because they most likely will be driving someday.
Middle school. That's kind of a
Yes.
scary thing for a lot of people to talk about, right? Because in I think most shop managers would say, "Hey, I would love to get involved with schools, but I don't have time." And a lot of them don't have a relationship with a local high school or tech school. And now you're introducing middle school. Uh, how has that impacted your ability to get more visibility to the industry?
I think that's been hugely impactful because it's not just the kids, it's the parents, and then it's also, the guidance counselors and things like that. So I look at it as every opportunity to talk to any of them at any of those age groups is an opportunity that they might not have otherwise. And we talk as an industry all the time about how we don't have enough help, and we don't. We don't have enough people in this field. And yes, it takes a long time to get these kids from middle school to having a career. But if it's something they're exposed to and something that they're interested in the middle school age, they're going to be more likely to take those classes in high school. They're going to be familiar enough with it that when somebody slides across this box that they can check, do you want to take this class? Do you want to take this class? They're going to be more intrigued to understand what those classes are in the first place. So we know that at sixth grade, there's maybe not seventh grade, there's maybe not a lot that they can do in this industry, but they can still do some fun activities. They can still do events, which we do all the time. And that kind of just gets their feet wet a little bit. So when those lists come up, when they're picking their high school classes, they're a little familiar with it, so they're more likely to take a look at those things. Especially career paths for women. That's a big thing. Guidance counselors are still not talking to girls about this, and I hate to be the one
Yes.
to say it, but I will be the one to say it. I say this all the time. So that's a big thing too, and letting those girls know that these are career paths for them. And then part of it's talking to the parents, because parents can push that we need doctors, we need lawyers. Yes, we need everything. We do. But at the same time, this industry is amazing too. And nobody's going to be around to fix those vehicles if somebody doesn't start talking about the problem. And the elephant in the room is that we're not letting people know that this is a career path for them. And so it's been hugely rewarding. And the amount of kids that show up just in my shop, high schoolers, they just stop by. They just want to see how it's going, what's going on. They feel included. They're more likely to consider this. But when we talk to them from the perspective that, hey, it's cool if you don't even want to be part of this industry, that you don't have to be, but you're going to be driving a car. So maybe let's talk about some of the basics. So when you do have to take it in, you have a better relationship and understanding of how that works with your shop as well. So, I mean, it just kind of helps industry as a whole, that people know this is not a scary industry. It doesn't need to have all these stigmas against it, and, all of those things. So, I mean, yeah, talking at an early age, I think is one of the reasons that we did have a shortcoming for a little while with so many technicians, because these kids just didn't know it was an option.
The fact that you have young people coming to your shop just to check in and hang out is
Yeah.
so cool to me. And I think it shows how open of an environment that you've created, to the point that they, feel safe enough to come into a shop. I don't know a whole lot of shops across the U.S. that students would feel welcome
Yeah.
in, let alone just kind of like to go there to hang out.
Yeah, we've definitely done things extremely unconventional. So I'd agree with you. I look back to when I was in high school, and I would have probably never stepped foot into any one of them, let alone just to be like, "Hey, what are you working on today?"
Right.
But it's definitely trying to have a different perspective on it. And yes, we are really busy, and we have to make sure the kids aren't walking through the shop. They can't be doing that. There's a lot of rules with it, which they respect. That's the best part. Is these kids
Yeah.
absolutely respect it. Is it a good time? Are you super busy? So we've been doing a lot of outside things with them, since we see so many of them stopping by. We have different like car meets that we'll have kind of in cookouts or whatever. And then we'll invite them, and they get to talk to each other. And we invite techs from all over our city, or service writers, or whoever. We're friends with so many of these people we race with. And these kids get to mingle with all of them. And most of them are finding job placement just like that.
WrenchWay is gearing up to host our first series of Techmission local events in 11 cities across the U.S. Each city's virtual event will include a shop showcase to give technicians a detailed look at what it's like to work at the top shops in their area without having to leave their couch, a survey that will give a voice to technicians to provide feedback on the industry, tons of awards for the best shops, technicians, and instructors, over $10,000 in prizes, plus a recognition room where participants can give a shout out to a teacher, coworker, manager, or friend who has made a positive impact on their career. Join us the week of September 18th to empower technicians, highlight great shops, and celebrate our community's automotive and diesel industry. Sponsorships are also available. Registration is free and now open. Go to WrenchWay.com, click the local chapter link, and select your city to learn more and pre-register. Link is in the show notes. You're creating some of that passion for cars that I think has gone away in young people drastically, right? I think there's a stat out there right now that roughly, I don't know, I don't want to say the stat because I'm not 100%, but I'm just going to throw it out there. It's like almost 60% of 18-year-olds don't have their driver's license right now,
Yeah.
which is nuts. And I think that is because we haven't really exposed them to how cool car culture can be and how cool it is to get in a car and go fast and kind of feel that rush. And you can't feel that on a video game, right? You've got to
Right.
be able to get behind the wheel of a car and kind of feel that.
Yeah, you definitely have to. You have to get them a different perspective on it. You have to get them to understand. I mean, this is also a good way to have some freedom. You know, you get your transportation and you get your way to go around. But if you don't know how to take care of it, you know, obviously you're going to be a little more skeptical. And but then they make so many, like you said, the car community. They make so many good friends along the way, and you know, a lot of them now coming together. People that weren't even friends before, and so it's just kind of a whole. That once you're in it, you know how amazing it is, but it's a
Yeah.
matter of getting them to check it out and see how great it can actually be. Yes, there's going to be places that aren't great, but there's places in any industry that aren't great. And so it's a matter of once they get into it, they love it, and I think they stick with it. And if I could do that as a career instead, just like travel all over this country and get every single kid excited about this field, I really would, because it's so much fun. And once you have that first experience, it's a little scary from my side too. So like I encourage anyone listening to do the same thing, reach out. And it's absolutely a little intimidating trying to figure out how you're going to wrangle some of these kids, because yeah, you never know with kids these days. So but I mean, it's a little intimidating, but once you get that ball rolling, like it's so rewarding at the same time. And then you see how quickly you can turn around in your area the need for kids coming into this industry.
How scary was it to go talk to middle schoolers? Because I have an example from my own experience where I went into talking to middle schoolers, and I've talked to a lot of high schoolers over the years, but middle schoolers were a completely different brand. And it was going in, and honestly, I probably take some blame because I didn't prepare overly well for my first middle school conversation. And you get in there, and it's just a different maturity level. It's a different personalities. I was quickly overwhelmed the first time I did it, and I remember immediately after that meeting being like, okay, I need to prepare a little bit better, maybe provide some more visuals or do something different than what I did, because this was a disaster.
Yeah, so I bombed plenty. I've done that myself, probably worse than yours, because I was like, yeah, I have kids, so I know how kids are, and that's fine. No, my kids are
No.
used to me being in this industry, and they grew up with me, so no, preparing off of my own children was not a great idea. So yeah, no, you have to. It's so there's a lot with it, but I mean, I do prepare a little bit more now with kids,
Yeah.
but sometimes especially at that age, I will completely throw out my entire presentation if I see that they're just not engaging, they're not responding, they're not like it's not resonating with them because they are at a different maturity level and a different age group. Sometimes they just want to hear jokes, you know? So I'll
Yeah.
make a joke instead. And then sometimes, you have the one little smart Alec kid. And so you got to give them a little back and like tell them it's okay. Like they can, you kind of got to engage with them. So I fly through it kind of a little bit different. Sometimes that presentation is completely out the window, and I just try to engage with them. And I ask them, "What do you like to do?" So I just had a group here about a week and a half ago, and I had two kids that I could not get to listen to. They just know. So what do you like to do? Well, we like to go swimming, and we like to go swimming with our friends. Okay, how are you going to get there? So it's like as soon as I can like get them interested in what interests them at that age. Now some kids were interested right off the bat. And so then you bring them together as a whole conversation. So if she's driving you and she doesn't know how to fix this, who's going to take care of this? If you're on your way to swimming and you want to get there, but then you have a flat tire, who's going to change that? Who are you going to call? And they're like, well, I'd call my dad, but he'd be at work. I'd call my grandma or I'd call my mom. And I was like, well, then what happens when, so it's just relating it back to kids because they're going so fast already that it's just trying to get them to understand and relate to how any piece of this industry can still relate to them, whether they're trying to work in it or not. All we have to do is get them to understand they're going to be in it in some capacity, whether they're the
Yeah.
customer or they're working in it or they're just driving one. So yeah, it's just sometimes, yeah, I've had to just completely throw it out and just go off of whatever these kids are talking about. But they're going for it and they like it. So
It's I think from a preparation standpoint, it's more about trying to think through maybe questions you'd ask them. And I love how you did that, how you associated it to something that they're already doing and that they love to do. And that was something I failed at miserably, was just not being prepared with the questions of like trying to get them to think and trying to get them to talk a little bit. And, I think we're so used to, in a lot of cases, being in a professional environment now that you're used to those types of questions. Whereas like, if you can go in and just have fun with them, I think that goes so far to show that, hey, this is a cool industry. There's cool people in this industry, and if you get them laughing and having a good time, I think that goes that sets a memory far better than you going in and giving a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to like when we were in middle school and had to go sit down for presentations, and who would I have listened to the most? So, like you said, yes, at work, you have to be professional in different speaking events. There's certain ones when I'm speaking to educators, that's one thing. When, I did that one, obviously I'm going to try to be a little bit more professional. But when it comes to kids, they don't want me to talk to them in a suit and tie. They want me to just talk to them, as they are. And so I think that recognizing that and putting on multiple hats all the time, that's probably the most important to anybody trying to get out and talk to them, is you have to really understand them in a different level. And then, you don't always have to be so serious in this industry. You really don't. It's a lot of fun. So bring the fun
Yeah.
with you. Yeah.
One of the points that you touched on, this is something that I think any trade publication you open right now, any topic is centered around the technician shortage, and you've really been proactive in working with the schools and trying to generate that next level of interest in the industry. In your opinion, what do you think it's going to take to really change this and really start to gain ground on the shortage as a whole?
I think there's two or three different things that I think would make the biggest impact with the technician shortages. Obviously, having people go out in their own communities and trying to really do the same thing, that's going to be helpful. Making sure people just know that it's a career path for them. But I think that a lot of it is addressing the reason people are leaving the field, because they're leaving the field and then they're not encouraging other people to be in this field. And so, it's a tough industry. Let's be honest. There's some days when you're 10, 12 hours in the shop and it's exhausting, and you can swing your hammer all day at rotors all day long. And, it's great. And you're solving a problem. But a lot of technicians feel underappreciated and undervalued. And, I don't think that they quite always have the same relationship that mine do with me. Like, we're pretty transparent. My technicians know our numbers. They know where we're at, what we're doing. And people tell me all the time, do not run your business like that. But it's what works for me, is that they understand where we at as a whole. I don't make more than any other employee here. So my technicians can always know that they're appreciated and valued. And you know what I mean? They're here to solve a problem for the customer. And then the technicians, they need to have a better relationship in that aspect with their employers, I would say, and employers with their technicians and service writers and everybody else. But yeah, I guess maybe addressing more of why people were leaving the field. And part of that is the pay. I hate to say that, but you can go, at least here, we're in Wausau area, you can go to any of the local factories and make twice as much money an hour. Customers don't really understand what the value is and what they're paying for either. So it's really been a lot that goes into addressing the technician shortage, I think. And then the training, there's tools, there's this, there's that. And so, but as a whole, technicians need to be heard better, service writers need to be heard better, but employers also need to be heard, and then customers. And then it has to be kind of a really well-rounded, I guess, attempt at fixing it. Like, it starts very small. But I think that making sure everybody's heard is kind of the most important part, so we can try to bounce around. Yes, maybe we don't have the best pay, but if you go in and love what you do every single day, like I could go work for, I've had offers to go run other places that are far more than I'm ever going to make in my own shop. But my goal is to change this industry, work really hard to make sure that it's a career path for women in particular, a lot of the setbacks that I've had, but it's also to change it for other people too. There's technicians, there's employers, and everybody wants to do better. So I think there's just so many reasons that we have such a shortage, but that's a big part of it, is that we're not addressing why they're leaving.
You hit that so squarely on the head. It's unreal. We work so hard to get more people into the industry, but until we fix the foundation of it, and I had a shop tell me a while back that one of their biggest problems was that their best technicians would tell young people not to come into this industry. And you see that all over the place. If you go to any Facebook message board or a Facebook group, and they're talking about it, and yet I don't know that we're on the same page between shops and technicians in terms of what would make them happier. And so when we do that, I think we're trying to fill a leaky boat, right? We just try to keep bringing more people in, but we're losing so many. And when our best are telling people to leave the industry, that does so much damage to the whole thing that it's hard to recover from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, that's a great analogy. I love that. I mean, we're just trying to fill a boat that's already sinking. And I think that's a twofold. Like, yeah, it's great. We're trying to get all these kids into it. These kids are going to be so well rounded and suited for the next generation of vehicles. They grew up with technology. Technology is in their hands all day, every day since these kids were little. Let us, keep doing what we're doing and get them in and trained while we're still holding it down, so they can keep taking over on this new technology. We can't train on everything forever. That's a big part of it. So I think if we were addressing that as a whole too, let's fix what we have to fix right now, to keep the techs right now, to keep the service writers, the parts managers. I mean, the tool sales guys, there's so many positions in this field and they're all struggling right now. And there's got to be a lot of reasons why. And then let's get these new kids in school while we're still holding it down. We're still training. We're still doing whatever. So they can take over on the future stuff. We keep going on what we have, and we just keep solving those problems in that middle. And a lot of it, again, is bridging the gap between the automotive industry and the customers. And customers have the stigma, whatever, they have all these things that they think about us in this industry. And a big portion of it is tackling that as well. And so, technicians, I get it. I was a technician. I mean, I still am, now I run the place, but I still am. So I get it. It's frustrating when, you're working really, really hard and now this person's complaining because they didn't understand, why you told them they needed this. And, so communication, and the technician feels like it's getting taken out on them, that the customer came back for something that might not have even been their fault, So it's just, there's so many pieces to it. But yeah, I mean, we can keep driving to get these kids in the industry, but they're going to have to come to an industry that is willing to fight to keep them.
We need a healthier foundation to it. And I want to get your opinion on how do we get that really, really good tech with 25 years of experience to speak glowingly of the industry, glowingly of the job? Like, what is it that we do to maybe have that paradigm shift with our most experienced people?
So, I mean, we know I'm very opinionated by now, and this
I
might
love
ruffle
it.
some feathers. I mean, honestly, I think that business owners, shop owners, dealership owners, you need to have those conversations and sit down with them and just say, hey, okay, even if you're happy, even if you make so much an hour right now, talk to your head techs. What is going on? What things frustrate you? I mean, I can tell you, I do that all the time. I talk to a lot of people. And, different systems, pay structures. I mean, nobody likes a flat rate system. I mean, well, some people do if they're beating it and they're, getting whatever. But the middle ground, you're not going to get those guys to turn into your head techs because they've already quit by then, because they can't be at work for 60, pushing 60 hours a week just so they can hit 30 on their time. I mean, it depends. Everybody's different. But, I mean, I know a lot of the feedback I get, and I would really encourage a lot of business owners to sit down and talk to their employees, because their service managers are probably not necessarily always reporting back either. But I mean, that's not to say everywhere is bad. I mean, there's so many fantastic places to work. And I think that if we can try to bring back more of that small town feel, maybe, I don't know how to really say that, but maybe bring that back a little bit. Try to
Yeah.
understand your employees a little bit better. And employees need to start talking before they leave too. They need to start going up and saying, and I can hear people right now, well, I've already tried. They don't know. I get that. But try anyways. Try to be heard in some capacity on what it is that you personally need, because everybody's wants and needs are different. I can tell you why I left a dealership and started my own shop. And that was because I was severely underpaid. The dealership in town paid me $10 an hour with my degree and 10 years of experience, and said if I didn't like it, go start my own shop. That's a very good way to get a competitor.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of things. My reason is going to be different from the next tech. So
One thing I absolutely loved about your perspective was your openness to working with competitors. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about with that small town feel. I grew up in a small town with, my dad's shop, and one of the unwritten rules back in the day was that you did not take a tech from a neighboring shop, right? Like that was, or any employee for that matter. It just was an unspoken rule that worked well. Obviously, that all went out the window when everybody got desperate. But
mm-hmm.
I think your approach to this, and openness to working with competitors is so unique in really trying to help the industry out, help these schools become bigger and stronger, but then also bringing your competitors into those conversations and having the security enough and the self-confidence enough to actually have those conversations with that dealership group down the road or with other independent shops. How important is that to you that the industry come together as a whole in order to attack this?
So I think it's really important. I think that first of all, I mean, people need to stop worrying about where their customers per se are going to go in that aspect, because if your customer wants to leave, that's a between you and them problem. Like, I have customers that I am not the right fit for, but thankfully I can call half of these other shop owners to be like, hey, this one is just not going to be a good fit for me. This is not working out in my favor. Do you want to take them? This is what's going on. And so it's not always a bad thing. They send me their customers too, and maybe I'll end up being the right fit. That's fantastic. But that's an internal problem. If you're super concerned about where every single competitor is going to go, you're not industry focused. You're focused on your dollar, which is important to a business. I understand that. But it has to be doing right by the customer. And so once you focus on doing right by the customer and the industry, then the competitors really aren't that big of a problem. You can learn a lot from your competitors. I sit in rooms with them all the time, and I will send them employees that aren't a good fit for me. If I get an application that I know I'm not willing to take, well, that kid wants to be in the field, or that person wants to be in the field. So let them try somewhere. Maybe I'm not hiring right now. And so they've done the same for me. We borrow tools. Independent's very hard. Anybody that owns an independent shop knows you
Yeah.
have to be able to work on everything. I work on everything from the 40s to brand new. I cannot possibly fit everything in this building. So, I have a guy right down the street, Jim, a Patriot. He is amazing. I really respect him and what he does. He is technically my competitor. But, he won an award last year for his business, and I'm going to give him credit there. We talk to each other about work-related matters. Does he have this tool? Do I have this tool? And he's not the only one. I work with dealerships, and we sit on multiple boards that are here to try to make the industry better. And when you make the industry better as a whole, your business is going to get better. Your technicians and service writers are going to be happier anyways. Your customers are going to be happier. So it's kind of a win all the way around, but it is extremely important to focus on the fact that your competitors can also be your biggest allies.
I think that is such an important message for the industry to hear, that your competitors can also become some of your best allies, because we're all kind of in this same boat, right? And I think there aren't a lot of shops that are struggling to get work right now. That doesn't seem to be the problem. It's
Yeah.
about employees and trying to find people.
Mm-hmm.
And you've set up a system to where maybe you don't have that immediate need for technicians so much right now. And I think that's a really cool thing, because it does allow you to say, hey, this person's looking for work and you want to keep them in the industry, and maybe they're not the right fit for you. Um, I think that when we talked about viewpoints and how we both see this industry, that's one of the things I think we're absolutely on the same page of, is it's going to take all of us. There's not one shop out there that's going to change everything. We have to really fix this at its foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a team effort. It absolutely is. And I think maybe I've just been very lucky that I do have a lot of shops like that in my area. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I talk to people all across the country though, and I would encourage a lot of people to do it because, you can always do better. Like I said, that's how I try to live. I don't even remember whose book it was in. It was, I don't know, maybe 1% better every day. And I would encourage any of these business owners to do the same thing, or any of these technicians, even. Like, you can do it by yourself, but you have to do it as a collective group. And like, I'm always supportive of this, and questions, or people will ask me, like, from other shops, well, how do I address this with my employer? Well, I know your employer, but I'm not going to tell them what you said, but I'm going to give you some suggestions on how maybe you can approach this conversation. But yeah, I think getting out of your comfort zone and trying to work together is really the only way this industry is going to keep changing for the better. And it really does benefit everybody. It benefits you how the guy in the bay next to you is doing, whether you think it or not. I mean, as a technician, you're used to competing against the guy next to you, because he's going to get your hours or you're going to get the hours. But in reality, if everything he's doing is damaging this business, that's affecting your hours, because those customers aren't coming back. So like, the more people just address those elephants in the room, and that working together is going to get them 10 times further, I think they'll see it.
Join top shops, dealers, and schools across the country to promote and improve technician careers. WrenchWay memberships help shops and dealerships engage with schools, improve technician hiring and retention, and make better business decisions with access to useful data. Shops use WrenchWay to build relationships with and support multiple schools on one platform. Show technicians why they're a great place to work. Stay up to date on best practices. Attract passive candidates. Tap into WrenchWay's growing network of industry professionals. And make better business decisions with meaningful industry data. Want to learn more about WrenchWay shop memberships? Visit WrenchWay.com and click on the For Shops tab or contact us at info@WrenchWay.com. Link is in the show notes.
One of the big factors that I think drives a lot of technicians away is shop culture and maybe not loving to be in a shop. And, I think we've all been in a workplace before where it's not the greatest culture in the world and how difficult that makes your daily life. How important is shop culture to you?
I think shop culture is extremely important because I am the direct result of what happens when you have a really bad work culture. When you do or say something like that to somebody, so when I was getting paid $10 an hour, they're hiding my tools. They're like, one guy was like, oh, I'm going to check your lights, right? So he said he's going to check the lights on this oil change. Did not tell me that the light was out, said everything was good. And then guess who gets yelled at? So that kind of work culture, I was like, I'm not going to stay here for this kind of money and put up with this. You challenged me. I went and did it. But so I look at it from that perspective, I'm stubborn, but there's plenty of these other people that are going to do the same thing. And there's really no reason for it. We're all trying to work on the same stuff and work together anyway. So work culture is extremely important. We have one rule here. Our the first rule in any interview that I give out. And if they can't agree to this rule, they do not get the job. And that is, you are going to work together as a team and you're going to drop everything to help somebody else if they're injured. Obviously injuries happen, right? So if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to work here. So if I have a technician that gets hurt in the bay, which has happened, it happens. I expect every single bay to stop until it's resolved. I don't want any other chaos around it. I don't want anything going on. I need one of my technicians to go up and get HR. I need one person to make sure if it requires going to the hospital or if it needs an ambulance. We've had to get an ambulance once. So I expect everything to stop until I know that human being is treated like a human being and handled. And so if people cannot agree to that type of work culture, they cannot work here. That's my number one rule. And so I think the more we start bringing back that kind of thing, that's going to be important too.
When you set the standard up front, that's the expectation, it makes it so much easier to hold people accountable to as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They know that the stakes are high. This is it can be a really dangerous job. And my guys know, my girls, they know. I appreciate them so much all day, every day. Like I said, I will remain the lowest paid employee here because if I can't live off of what I'm paying now, they can't live off of it either. But the expectations are massive. When you're going to do that, you're going to do right by the customer. You're going to do the best you can. If you make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, you're not sending it out the door like that. You're going to let me know and we're going to figure it out. It happens. But I think that the technicians being able to have those conversations with their employers openly, like you said, going back to before, I'll be very candid, and open about how we run things here. What I'm telling you is no different than my employees will tell you. I think that's going to be huge to shifting this industry.
How important is it to find not only the right technical skill set, but the right person for your shop?
I think it's extremely important for multiple reasons. Obviously, for the business sake. I mean, it's a business. You have to have somebody that's going to be a good fit. We don't want problems. We don't want any sort of drama coming in, anything like that, which can happen. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you take the gamble on the wrong person, and that's fine too. But also because it affects our customers. If they don't care about what happens to the customer's vehicle, if they can't treat it like whoever's the most important person to them, their mom, their wife, their dad, their husband, whatever, if they can't treat it like their car, like it's the most important person in their life's car, then they're not doing right by the customer in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think that finding the right person is extremely important because otherwise it's damaging to the business, but it's also damaging to the industry because now customers are getting a bad impression. Maybe the technician is brand new to the industry and you're not a good fit, and now they have a really bad impression of this industry. I think technicians need to get far more comfortable with moving around until they find where they think is the best fit for them. I don't think service writers, parts people, anybody. I don't think anybody should just feel like they have to stay where they are. Everybody's looking for people. I think until you find that perfect work culture, you should keep moving. But I think it's really important to find the right employee, but also to make sure that you're a good fit for them too.
I think when we talked before, you had mentioned something along the lines of you want them to care about the customer so much and really make that their top priority. The customer came in with a problem. You want to hire people that just go over and above to take care of a customer. And that part was really, really important to you.
Yeah. It is really important because, these people are trusting us as a whole, but if that's just me, them coming to me still affects you, and it still affects every other shop in this town and everybody else because it's the industry as a whole. The industry as a whole is up against all of these, and I hate to say it, a lot of these impressions that the industry is just here to screw you over, right? Like that's what we hear all the time. And a lot of these people are going in looking for a problem. It's not that these techs are trying to do a bad job, and it's not that the service writer or anybody else is trying to do a bad job, but a lot of times people just assume that's how it is, and they're going to go in looking for a problem. And if you go in looking for a problem, you can probably try to find something to complain about, whether it was there or not already, a scratch in your bumper that was there and documented the last 6 times, but so I mean, you have to care about the customer, and you have to care as much as possible about making sure they're educated and understanding and the communication is good, and customers can tell when you don't care.
Yeah. And maybe don't trust you as much because you might seem like you're trying to hide something, even if you're not, or, it is so much about building trust with your customers and with your team. And I did want to mention, you did something that was so drastic in my mind and so different than most shops would ever think of doing. And that was, you did kind of a hockey shift of a team, right? You had started from scratch. Walk me through that a little bit.
So I kind of, you always reflect as a business owner, and you kind of go back and you see shortcomings or where you missed the mark on some stuff. So for me, that was where the team dynamic shifted completely here. I wiped out my entire staff and started completely over because it was just getting too far away from me. It was, I was putting out this fire over here, and then I was seeing this fire over here behind my back, and I'm trying to run around and watch everything and fix everything at the same time. And, I really, at the time, was not looking as deeply into these employees that I had. And it doesn't mean that they weren't good people, but they weren't good fits. And so I ended up in one day coming in by myself completely in a fully operating 5-day shop. So this is a little intimidating, as you can imagine. I don't think I slept for days because it was so nerve-wracking, but it was the right move. So I eliminated the entire staff and started completely over. And it's been going really well since then. And I can wish all of them the best from before. But when I say I have expectations, some of these were very basic and I was letting a lot slide. And I learned what that did damaging wise to the industry and to the business. And so I speak on a lot of those topics, what I expect on employees now, because I wasn't holding them accountable. And yes, we were friends, we're a team. Like I get that part, we're supposed to be a team, but when there wasn't enough care for the customer and when people were doing a lot of things that they shouldn't have been doing, and I was constantly seeing these comebacks or fixing these issues. And so super intimidating, super scary, but as a business owner, you can absolutely start over. I started completely over and ended up only bringing one employee back from that entire crew. And now we are all doing phenomenal. I have a fully staffed team and they've been doing so much more training. They're really invested, but I would say the same for technicians. Yes, it's absolutely scary, or service writers. It is so scary to just jump ship and go somewhere else. But if you have to do that to find a good work culture, or if you own a business and have to create a good work culture, you can do it. It's a little scary, but you can do it.
That sounds about as scary as it gets. And I'm wondering how, your thought process evolved there, because that seems so out of left field in a different approach. But I commend you for it, for just kind of halting, taking a step back and saying, okay, we're going to fix this the right way. We're going to do it the right way. And I don't know that there's many people, not only in our industry, but in any industry, that would go to those measures to do that.
Yeah, no, I had just gotten to a point where no matter how much I was trying to fix, no matter how much I was trying to get, somebody trained or get this on track, and I was carrying so many extra positions here for myself. Like, I was carrying so much weight, and this work wasn't done, and this person wasn't calling people back. And, I'm hearing the customers' concerns and complaints, and, I have to do something at some point. And so, the minor things, it wasn't working. It was completely falling apart. And so it was a now or never move that I really just on a whim was like, look, there is no other option. At this point, there's no other option. Either we're going to fold, which I don't want to do because I still have things I want to fix, or we're going to get to the root of what the issue is here. And so it came down to, I didn't have enough boundaries. I didn't have enough expectations at the time. And I didn't have it all figured out. I mean, I still don't have everything figured out, but from then to now is so much different. But, I was just listening to so many concerns and complaints. And then I was hearing what they were saying about how they wanted to work on things, or customers, or, how they wanted to do things. And it was just not with my vision. It's just not helping the industry at all. And I can tell you that, most of them don't work in this industry. They are doing jobs now that are better suited for them, which is fantastic. And I'm really happy for them. And I love that. And I stay in contact with most of them, but it was just not helping anything. And so, yeah, it was probably, that required a lot of coffee and a lot of, I don't even know what.
I can only imagine how hectic that time was, and probably how scary that time was for you. And the fact that you had the guts to make the move and do it in an effort to do it the right way, I can't tell you how much I respect that. And you probably did them a favor in a lot of ways, right? They found a better fit for what they needed to do, and it's something that probably fit their skill set better. And there's no shame in that. For those of you that are listening out there that may have gone through something similar, don't hang your head on something like that, because you will find a better spot for you and find something that makes you happier, more fulfilled by finding the right path. But the fact that you kind of made that happen, what were some things you learned as you built your new team then? Because again, you're starting from scratch. I'm guessing you learned some things from the first time around, and then when you're building from scratch, there's probably some things you wanted to change as you brought in a new team.
Yeah, absolutely. So oh my gosh, I learned so much on this alone. One, you hire too quick and you fire too slow. So my thing is I had some good employees that I ended up having to lose in this process because I made the mistake of hiring somebody that shouldn't have been here and was letting it become too toxic in the workplace for them. And so the one thing is I'm not willing to lose a good employee anymore over a bad one. I am not willing to do that.
Great advice.
I think that's the one thing. These people work way too hard to be surrounded by negative. So I definitely learned that the hard way. That is something I learned the hard way. I cannot allow that to happen. Another thing, my training. I had to step up my training 10 times more because I was trying to train every single position here. So many people at the same time. And it was a lot of pressure. It wasn't working. I had to put together different training programs and find other resources, which is a huge topic in itself. We know this industry is always needing more training, especially independent. We're not a dealership. We don't have these pre-built training programs we can just send them to. And so that was a big one. I did not have enough training prepared for a lot of these guys. So I was trying to train all of these people. I'm trying to run the business. I'm trying to do this, and so there was a lot of it that was on me in that aspect. But the biggest one, like I said, is if you have somebody that comes in that just bleeds toxic, the rest of your employees are suffering. And so that was my mistake, my biggest mistake will never do that again. So like I have that written on a sticky note in my office on my whiteboard. I'm not willing to lose a good employee for a bad one. I would do whatever it takes to keep those good ones because they worked for it, they deserve it, and they should be in a good work environment. So that was a huge one for me. And then stepping up the work culture, and then stepping up my expectations when I hire. You cannot just hire anybody and think that you can train them into the position. There's just sometimes not a good fit. So that's where a lot of those shifts came in when I was like, you know what, this person seems really nice, but I don't need anyone in this position here that would be a good fit for them. So maybe the guy down the road does, or maybe the next one down the road needs this person because they seem really nice, but I don't have the position for them. And they seem like they'd work really hard. Instead of trying to like create a spot or put them into a different position that wasn't really a good fit for them, I'll just find them somewhere else if that's an option. So really like redefining my expectations for what I'm hiring, what I'm expecting in them, what they're expecting of me. That is one secret question in my interviews that I will give you. I ask every single person I interview, what do you expect from your employers and what do you hope you can see from your employer? So I want to know what they want out of me, what they expect out of me too. So that's a big one. And that question usually gets me the biggest answer, sometimes 2-3 paragraphs. So, I mean, it's fantastic. So I really just redefined my business from beginning to end with this move. Like I said, scariest day ever. I mean, I think it was more intimidating than the day that I opened. I opened and I started by myself, and I was by myself for 6 months almost. So, I mean, I'm no stranger to being in this on my own, but not at this capacity, not 4 years in or 5 years in at that time that this happened. But yeah, restructured the entire business. I really stepped up the training. I really stepped up the community involvement, my expectations, their expectations. And I really got more open with all of my employees about the days that we're struggling. This is what we're struggling with. I forget to do something. I'm running out the door for a meeting and they're like, oh, she forgot she had something on her calendar. So like it's just really shifted everything. And so I only say a lot of these things with the understanding that I have been there and I have had a toxic work culture at one point here that I had to fix. And I'll be extremely open about that because it's only a matter of like, what did I do to correct it? And what do I do every day now? It's so easy for people to preach about what they don't know, but it's a lot different when you've ridden through those highs and those lows to know that it's really scary. It really, really is. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, the whole topic is how do we improve this industry? And so I think the honesty and transparency from everybody is going to be extremely important to what's been going wrong and what's been going right.
How do we make it easier for that young lady that's out there to get in the industry? And speaking from your experience, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this topic, but I am interested because I do think there's a lot of shop owners, dealerships that want to get better at this, but at some level might not know how or might not know what their blind spots are.
So yeah, this is a huge topic. I love this topic though. So there's a lot to it. It starts again with the career path, is that people need to be talking to girls that this is a career path. And I think we've been blowing this out of the water like phenomenally over the last couple of years. When I first started, there was only a handful of like women-owned shops in this country. There was only a handful of them are in the field. I'm in all these like Facebook groups and there's like these new women popping up all the time and they're getting into the field. So like the women in this industry have been really huge with like tag teaming together. Like we are like going to make this happen and making power moves. And so that's amazing. There's so many phenomenal women that are out preaching all the time about this and talking about it and like really encouraging them. I think the biggest thing for like the shops and the business owners is to really hold themselves and their own employees accountable in this particular topic when it comes to women in the industry. So the same place that paid me $10 an hour, in my interview, they said they didn't know how their husbands' wives would feel like about me being in the shop. And I was like, that's really more of a them problem, not a me problem. So, and now they unfortunately have to work with me all the time. I don't know, fortunate, not fortunate. I don't have any idea. I work with them and I'm very civil and I'm pleasant because I have to be and I want to be, because I think that it was a learning lesson for everybody involved. And now they actually have women working for them. So that's fantastic. And I'm proud of that. But I go around my industry, like my community as a whole, right? And I think that oh my gosh, they're so rich. I don't even know. It's, yeah, making sure women know that it's a career path for them. Like, I could go on this topic forever, so I'll keep it short. Making sure they know it's a career path, making sure parents understand that this is a career path, and there's plenty of us out here doing it right now. So for the techs already in this industry, just know, just because you don't see it happening all day, every day, does not mean it does not. You should jump into our Facebook groups once in a while, and you will see the comments that happen all day, every day. It took a long time for like my friends to be like, oh no, this actually does happen. Like, these girls complain all the time that people are rude or discredit what they know or whatever because they're women. Until they see it happening, they don't understand the capacity. I would say it's on like a daily basis. Someone has something to say. And so I started making jokes, like, it's not maybe nice, but I'm like, yeah, if I think really hard with my little girl brain, I could probably figure it out, because I make a joke out of it. Like, what are you going to do? Like, yes, I'm a girl, I have kids. Like, I know that, but like, let's move past it. So now I say, look, it's 2023. Why are we still having this conversation? So
Right.
the techs, when they have a girl come in to their shop and they're working in that bay, keep that in mind, that you might be the only person being nice to them or helping them or like not discrediting them because of that. And you're probably going to be the reason they either leave or stay in that field. You want people to be in this field, right? Like, you want to be able to take a day off. You want more PTO. You want to have your shop doing better so you can have higher pay. So work with them. Let them be part of this because they're going to have your back. Now, we need to change the way people in this field already think about women in this field too. So one thing is, well, you can't lift that. Yeah, well, your hand can't fit in a lot of places. Mine can. So I'm going to help
Right.
you and you're going to help me. So when I cannot lift that, if I can't find leverage and I can't find a tool, then you're probably going to help me. Because the day that you need help grabbing something that you dropped in that engine bay and your hand is too big to fit there, I'll probably get it for you. And we're going to be doing a very nice job working together. So, I mean, oh my gosh, I've done so many speaking events on this, and there's like 1,000
I love
ways
it.
that it has to be addressed, but this would be like a whole nother hour.
We should definitely do that. I will ask one question as a piece of advice, because I think this is an interesting dynamic in shops, is that I think a lot of technicians, they want to be accommodating with maybe that female that comes into their shop, and say it's the first time they've had a female that they're working next to, or they've had limited experience in that regard, but they also like hear the woman say, I don't want to be treated any differently. I just want to be treated like one of the other techs. And I think it's a weird dynamic, because I think we're psychologically trying to help, or a lot of guys will try to help, but then they also are just kind of like, they don't know where that line is, right? And they're trying to be accommodating, but they also don't want to make you feel like you're not part of the team or not one of the guys, right? And it just always is a fascinating dynamic to me in a shop workplace culture.
Yeah, so I think it just takes some time, just like it does with any new employee. Like, you don't know any of them that come in, so you don't know how far you can joke with them. You don't know what's going to get you reported to HR. Like, it's just like anybody else. In here, I probably make more jokes than 90% of my guys do. Like, so it is just a matter of getting to know them either way. But yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing all the girls say. Like, don't treat me any different. Don't even acknowledge it. Like, if I ask you a question, you don't have to respond to it in this like super condescending manner, but just like you would anybody else. And we see how you interact with everybody else. So we see how you are as a person. So just treat us like everybody else. And when we need your help, we're going to ask for help. If we're doing something wrong, definitely tell us. Because we also don't like that people will just let us fall because they don't want to overstep those boundaries. So if you would correct the next tech for doing it, correct us for doing it. And if you wouldn't, then I don't know. I don't know the situation, so I can't say don't repeat, but yeah, absolutely. But then on top of it, sometimes it's standing up for them too. So like my text right now, my text right now, you don't want to come in and make a comment about how like I'm a dumb girl. They will come flying up there. I swear they can hear it from a mile away. They will come up there and they will make you feel really bad about what you said after I've already made you feel really bad about what you said. So, it's also the defense side of it, that if people are like knocking them down constantly because they're a girl. And that's the only reason. Like, I mean, I don't know everything. You don't know everything. He doesn't know everything. So, if someone is doing that, then it's kind of also going to be yeah, I want to be treated like everyone else. But at some point, can you just step in and like make sure they know that, like, I am part of this team. So this is not how we treat the team,
You hit on a really good point there on it's probably no different, male, female. That first time or that first period of time that you're working together is always awkward, and you're trying to kind of feel each other out. And it's probably no different in that regard. So that's a really solid point. And I do agree with you that this probably deserves its own episode. There was so much that we didn't get to in today's episode, which I feel really bad about, but the conversation was so good. And as I mentioned at the top, it's very easy to talk to you about this stuff. And I think that's a really cool part. And you're doing more and more speaking. You're doing more and more of getting around the country and kind of sharing your mission. How do people get in touch with you to talk through this even further?
Yeah, so people message like our Facebook page, whatever, something like that, our Instagram page. People can get a hold of us there. But I actually have a lot of people, they just email me. Like especially like other shop owners, they'll like email or we'll start texting, calling, kind of whatever works because, obviously you're super busy. But yeah, I have people reach out all the time through different social media platforms, or they just call the shop. They happen to see it here. They saw it on this or whatever, and then they call the shop. And so one of the girls that answers typically is just kind of filters it to like, she'll get to you this time. It's going to be a long conversation. She'll be available then. But yeah, anybody's always welcome to reach out, email, social media, whatever kind of platform works best at any time. So.
If you get a chance, for those of you listening, head out to woostersgarage.com. I was looking through your About Us, and I absolutely love the About Us. But one thing I call out, or that I'd like to call out, is that in your Meet the Team, you have your grandpa, Dan Wooster, as the original, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, he is the original. He's the original. So I say that all the time. I tell people, I'm like, yeah, that's the OG. But that's what my employees say about him too. And so he doesn't work here. That's the best part. He's the inspiration for everything. He's rarely here. And when he's here, all of a sudden one customer tells another customer, and I have all these people stopping in just to see my grandpa, and they're emailing the shop. And he lives like 4 hours away from here. So
wow,
it's fantastic. But I love it. So he's like he's the original, and he's the inspiration for all of this. And he's the motivation to keep going and do better. And wherever he left off or leaves off with this industry, then I just want to take it from there and keep going. Now, we don't always have the same opinions on everything, but that's okay.
Well, he did a great job creating a legacy of which you're continuing on, and you're doing so many great things. I encourage you to keep doing them. You're such a positive impact on our industry, and really, really want to have you back on for another episode because this was fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.